The foundation of human understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And control them you must, otherwise other people will control them for you. And tonight and for the rest of the week, we're going to explore this serious problem which exists in our society, but no one has ever taught you how to control your emotions. Let's start with a thought here, and we'll expand the ideas and delve into the subject much more deeply. When was the first time you ever asked yourself, what am I here for? Some people ask before confusion, as I was saying to a young person over here a few moments ago, and some people ask it amid confusion, but it doesn't matter when you ask that question, for what reason I was born. That's the question. Your life story begins. You begin that moment, even though it doesn't sound like very much, that moment in your life is probably the most important moment in your life. And the moment you ask that question, whether you realize it or not, that question doesn't come from your own intelligence. It's come from being awakened to ask the question. That's a strange thing for a person on television or radio to say, but of ourselves, we don't have an original thought in our head, except to realize you don't have an original thought in your head. But what gave you that original thought? It's what caused you to realize. And everything in your life you realize hasn't come from your own cleverness, like some people think. All the egomaniacs think they originate thinking. But it comes from an original source, and it comes by way of an awakening. And there are some people who are willing to be awakened, and some people are not willing to be awakened. And the fact that you can ask the question is a blessing in itself. And the minute you ask that question, you get an answer. And then your whole life begins to move forward. And then you come to a problem. And then then there comes a question. And then, if you don't worry, just have faith, resist the temptation to worry, which faith is. Don't worry, and you have faith. Then the answers come. And you become self-answering. Not you, ego self-answering, a divine ego. You are beginning to develop a relationship with something greater than you, and beginning to serve the purpose for which you were created. And at the end of your life, the question will be answered. It will be fulfilled. But it's a long journey. You're moving forward, propelled by an awakening. I remember when I was a little boy, I asked that question, what am I here for? Who can I ask? And immediately, it was as though somebody had said it to me, and nobody was there, and no one said anything. There was no words. It was just a knowing that I would know. And I was perfectly satisfied with that answerless answer. Therefore, I never looked to authorities, not as a child. I always knew I knew more than anybody immediately. I always could see the experts didn't know a damn thing. To me, all the experts looked stupid, even as a child. The preachers, the rabbis, the authorities, the parents, I could see they're all mad. I wasn't very popular because they didn't like me looking at them that way. And they wanted to put the light out. And they couldn't. I gave the sergeants a hell of a time in the army. They try to upset me and to get me to be a disciplined soldier, and I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't react. So they reacted. And pretty soon I had them blancoing my webbing and polishing my boots. I'd hypnotize them. Now that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We were having a little chat here a few minutes ago, and the lady in the front row kindly gave me an excellent title, The Battle of the Pedestals. Now, the number one problem of life, I'm just going to state the problem, and then we're going to go from there. We had such a nice thing going a few moments ago. I just hope that we can reestablish that. The number one problem in life is egotism. Pride. Pride is something that the teachers and the churches promote. You know, pride in your country, worst thing in the world. Pride is very dangerous, and pride is hypnotic. Pride is traumatic, and pride takes its identity from external gods. You shall have no other God before me. When you become prideful, when you fall from that innocence that asks the question, what am I here for? Give me direction. I don't know. And then you begin to know, and then you've got problems, and then you answer the same question without words arises, and you are concerned, but immediately you become illuminated, and you start to move forward. You start to see clearly. There's no choice once you're on that path. You don't have any choices. You just keep moving from, answers to problems, problems to answers, so that you never have to ask anybody outside yourself, never. Because you found your real God, the God of the ground of your being. The trouble is, when you fall from that, you have to have a model, a role model on the outside. Because what pride is man trying to be God. And ever since the day you're born, the world around you has tried to destroy this innocence that you have, that asks the question, what am I here for? And tries to make the outer authority that which you look to for direction. Because as you do that, you make them God. And then you look to them for answers, and then your light goes out. You get the direction, it's really misdirection. You're more confused, you look to them for answers, and so on, until you are totally screwed up. Now, do we have any questions right at this point? Because I'd be happy to, it's kind of, the kind of things I've said this evening may not be conducive to questions at this point. Do we have any? Okay, there's a lady way back there.
This state that you speak of being in touch with the Spirit of God inside and feeling that assuredness inside and waiting for the revelations to happen in their own time,
Yes.
is often taken by the world, because you don't buy into their
As egotism.
system, as egotism,
Sure.
as egotism, as pride.
Yeah, they look at
And
me.
it's so bizarre. They take the truth and turn it exactly around.
Opposite
they
way.
make the opposite of it.
They try to make you doubt that you know, and they try to make you believe that they know, that you should go to them.
To confuse.
They confound. And that is the spirit of the external God. And it is jealous. It's a jealous God, just like our God is a jealous God. And it wants you to worship that person. It wants you to worship a person appointed in the system, representative, you see. And they will cater to that need. And your need for them will grow. And if you notice, the Pope was just here recently. I just don't want to say anything derogatory about the Pope, because he's probably a very nice man. I kind of like him. He's likable. But he doesn't realize the harm he's doing. Does anybody know why? Because he's a pedestal. And now, this is the problem that everybody has, because of they've lost their internal ground of being. They have an external God that they relate to, a model, out of which they take a role model identity, or impression of themselves, and they feed the inner with the outer. You see? So that you put somebody on a look, let me back up a second. You put somebody on a pedestal. Let's look at the dynamics of it. You put somebody on a pedestal, and just look what you are doing as a person when you put somebody on a pedestal. Because in marriage you do it. Women do it to husbands. Husbands do it to wives. We do it. We always have some hero worship. We've always got someone we look up to, and they become our leader and our spiritual guide. Religion, politics, anything. But when you do that, watch the psychodynamics of it. Ready? The little girl is honored by the Pope. She feels so excited. Or the woman, she's the most important day of my life. Tears running down her cheeks. Oh, I feel so excited. I feel so wonderful. I came out of a sick bed for this. And what's going on in her mind? Look at the insanity. She has made the Pope a God figure.
Seduced her into that.
Right? She was seduced.
Yes.
She was seduced from her God to having a God. Otherwise she'd be nothing. But now she has become the brainchild, the extension of the system. So she's been violated, and the little God has to have a bigger God. But the little God inside is ego, and the ego cannot stand reality. It cannot sit still to know what's been done to it. It has an intelligence of its own, and it naturally gravitates to that which has violated it, to love it. What violates you, you seek to nurture you. Because you are the extension of what it is, and without it you cannot grow. So you put it on a pedestal, but you recognize that it's God, and it will recognize you as God. Now in your mind though, you are the greater God. The Pope really isn't the greater God. Because when that little girl or that young woman, the old woman in this story, feels honored by the presence of the Pope. Do you see the word honored? This Holy Father, I feel honored. See, but in your mind you have created a God that honors you, the God that you've elected to see you as God. And this is the game that's being played with everybody. With women put men on pedestals too. See? And the fall, women put men on pedestals, and exactly the same process occurs.
There's another side of it that I see, and that is when you're working in systems, whether it's a family, whether it's a job, an organization, a company, and there is someone who knows what his source really is, who is definitely connected to God, that also seems to tempt other people to persecute that person, because they're not because they're out proselytizing or trying to overtly win other people over to their way of living, but simply by being that example, by being focused, you draw all sorts of...
The word is defocused.
Is allowing other people to push your buttons all the time.
Did you hear what I'm saying? In other words, we have to be defocused. They're focused. They're fixated. They draw from that the elixir of their pride. See? And the more they grow pridefully, the more pomp and ceremony, the greater glory do they have to attribute to their figurehead. The more trappings and the more trumpets, you know, all of and because it's all external, and we imbibe it. We draw something from the outside into ourselves, and we pull ourselves up, and we feel we're so caught up in that. We're so caught up in it, we don't see the trick. We don't see the degradation of our souls, the deterioration of our souls, because we're actually deteriorating and becoming the extension of this jealous God spirit on the outside. Now, the young lady was saying just now that people are jealous of you and they hate you for seeing them for what they are, seeing right through the game. They feel uncomfortable. They don't know what it is. But the light that shines in all of you that do not play this game or do not wish to play this game, who are close enough and having asked the question, what am I here for, you're beginning to see everything for what it is, and beginning with that everybody's caught up in something. Even the guy playing the football. watching football. He's made a hero of this football idol. And when he scores, he has created this lesser god to acknowledge him as the greater god. And when he scores, he roots for him as though he made him do it, and he takes the credit. He goes wild and throws his hat up in the air. And see? That's a form of insanity. And so most people are caught up in that sort of thing. And your whole life is caught upness with something. Because all of us take a sense of identity from people, places, and things, even animals. And now that is a total problem, that everything we do, everything without any exception, we don't relate to it properly, but we draw some ego value from it. You buy a new car. What do you sit in this new car? McDonald's hamburger. We do it all for you. Those hamburgers are no damn good. I can't eat one. It's like eating sawdust. My 3-year-old can make a better hamburger. I can't, but you see what it is? It's ego. There's the arches. See? There's the sense of being something when you eat the hamburger. And your mother makes a beautiful dinner and a beautiful cake and beautiful decorations, and you eat the work of art. See? It's doing something for the king. And a beautiful woman. Why is a beautiful woman accepting you? Because you're involved with beauty and you forget your ugliness. And you think you've become beauty. And you forget your ugliness. It's a release, isn't it? But then you become addicted because the whole process of becoming involved with beauty and endowing your ego with a sense of beauty is a lie. You're actually becoming uglier. Because what's behind the beauty is ugliness. And what's behind the great bishop, the religious leader, is evil. Because it's just an illusion. There's something has created this illusion that's evil, and what's getting into you is evil. So you don't know how many beautiful women you have, how many beautifying religions you have. It doesn't matter. Everything leaves you with a greater sense of emptiness, a feeling of desolation, see? And makes you a bigger ego, but uglier, and yet not wanting to face the ugliness, wanting to be more beautiful, more religious. So therefore the process repeats itself endlessly until you're dead, until you've worshipped the wrong God all the way to your grave, a God that by the process of involvement has made you unconscious to your sin, but makes you it saves you from realizing your guilt and gives you a sense of innocence. All the wicked people of the world and all the people caught up in those madnesses feel no guilt. Therefore, they feel perfect. Yet if I should say I don't sin and I'm perfect on my way, everybody will laugh at me because they have their own idea of perfection, you see? Okay? But they have their own ways of not feeling guilty. More drink, more religious services. See, they feel more progressive ways of being more innocent and beautiful in their wickedness. Yes?
Well, I didn't know what prideful was until I went to the dictionary and actually looked it up. And
Does
it
it
was
actually say it there? I've never looked it up myself. What does it say?
pride, basically. But a lot of cultures are taught that being prideful is good. Okay,
That's all wrong.
I know.
Guess who's teaching
after
that?
Yeah, after I started meditating, I learned that it was wrong. But still, again, after that, it turns into it progresses into a different stage. Then, as far as it's more advanced. Then, how do you pinpoint that?
No, I don't understand what you're saying. Pride doesn't progress to a different stage, because if you're sleeping in a house and you wake up and the house is on fire, the fact that you awakened didn't cause the house to catch on fire. You just awakened and discovered it was. But in our egotism, we think that when we start to wake up and see what our house is on fire, we see the desolation of our existence. It's almost as though we tend to blame the awakening. See? And want to get under like little kids, we put our heads under the covers and put the fire out. We want to go to sleep again. That's how we've always dealt with it. Pride has always dealt with the consciousness of its sins by being unconscious to sin. So therefore all of your religions And all of your, well, all of the methods that pride uses are methods of reducing consciousness. See? And whatever method you use to reduce consciousness is a denial of truth, duplicating original sin. Isn't that what man fell from the spirit of truth, according to our little story? If it's true, but you can see it repeating itself endlessly in our own lives. Different bodies, but same line, same drama. You see, and you see it duplicating it. The moment man's consciousness fell to become God. See, he lost the pattern, the ground of being of everything he could have been that was good and pure and holy and healthy and eternal and everlasting and all the rest of it. And now the other identity creeps in, and this identity seeks that which created it. And it seeks unconsciousness to that which originally created it, because it's called guilt. And that's what's wrong with our society. Now, very few people can understand. There are people who are listening to me in this room now can understand every word I'm saying. Because when you become unconscious to the truth, you're actually rejecting that truth and accepting a lie. And your whole life is built on lies. Emotional involvements with the external world as a means of energizing the lie into your brain. And if you weren't caught up in something, you'd see what a jerk you are. But no ego can tolerate that. It's an existence, it's a life that leads to death. And that's why Christ taught that unless you lay down your life, your ego life and breath, that's the actual translation, who shall preserve his ego life, his ego animal life and breath, accurately translated, shall pick up the spiritual life and breath. Lay one down and you pick up the other. But if you preserve your ego life, ball games, hot dogs, I'm not saying that you can't eat a hot dog, but you can't lose yourself in a hot dog. I can eat a hot dog, or the worst I can get is indigestion, but what the worst happens to you is you lose your soul, because you're escaping into a hot dog. I can watch a ball game, and bored to death actually, but you see what I mean? I can watch a ball game and learn something from it, I suppose. If there's anything to learn, I'll learn from it. But I'm not going to be caught up with it. I'm not going to go crazy. You can't excite me because I'm already happy. You see, I don't want to be distracted, because there's something about in recreation and distraction which is a deeper involvement with the spirit of the lie. And it's glorifying. See? Any other questions? Don't tell me we stopped dead in our tracks here. Okay, we'll have a question right over here from the young lady.
What would be the limit of your you said you won't be distracted while you're, let's say you go watch a game, maybe your son's playing in the team in a baseball game or something like that.
That's all right.
Do you rule the team on, or
No, that's fine, you do. There's a right way and wrong way of doing it, but you don't get lost in it. See, what you want to do...
how far do you... in order for me to see the example, how far do you really go? Can you give me that example?
Well, I don't understand the question, but I sort of do.
Okay, so you're sitting out
how
in the
far? I don't know
bleachers.
what that means.
Okay, you're sitting out in the bleachers and your kid's out there and he's up to bat or something.
You just...
Say, give it your best shot, Johnny. Or
See, what is hard for you to understand is that you've probably never been out of your head, never been out of your emotions, and never enjoyed anything from an objective view in your life, because you've always been getting something out of by getting more involved with your own family. You get more involved with your family, the more you get in touch with others, the more out of touch you are with your true self. And for some people who don't want that true self, who want to, persist in the life of pride and egotism, that is a release. They want to get, you see people at the airport, you haven't seen them for a long time. Hello! They suck on you. And I say hello, and they stand back like they've been hit with a ton of bricks. I don't respond. I don't need to be involved with them, their involvement with me. See? Because it's not that kind of hello. Because they're pleased to see me because they're sucking the life out of me and getting something out of me that isn't there. It just isn't healthy. Don't you feel uncomfortable when people do that to you? Don't you feel uncomfortable when people put you on a pedestal and say how wonderful you are? Don't you feel like something, you feel uncomfortable? You feel like you're being set up? Right. Right? And that somehow you're being manipulated and you feel awkward and guilty afterwards for being so honored? No, you got to be very careful.
But Mr. Mathis, when I came, I had this feeling that I wanted to hug you.
It's all right.
It's all right. No, but
I can take it in my stride.
Well, I hadn't seen you in a long time.
Can you hold that question to the next segment?
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's right. I like to be hugged, but I don't want to be sucked on. I'm not a lollipop, you know what I mean? I don't want to be drained. And there's a difference. I don't want something to draw something out of me to build their self with. But anyway, I just want to tell the viewers that we do have problems with supporting the program. And between my radio program and this one, it's $40,000 a month. And if I could get people, if I can get the viewers right now, just brand new listeners, $600 at $20 a month each, I could pay for the program, but I'm not anywhere near that. I'm not anywhere near it. I'm not even paying a quarter now. It was a third. Now it's down to a quarter. So, one word from me and you'll do what you like. You know what I mean? I can't spend the whole program begging for money like the Bakers or the other so-and-sos. Just not that. And you can't belong, you can't join, and we don't have a crystal cathedral to build. And so I don't offer myself for you to get caught up with me and you feel good. In order for you to continue to feel good, you have to keep me on the radio because I'm lying to you all the time. You know what I mean? And you feed on a steady diet of lies that I give you and you love me for it. You understand how that works? That's how those programs work, and all the phony people are caught up in it. But I'm looking for my own kind, and I can't appeal to you in that way. So I just if you want the program, then save me so I can save you. Simple. It's a deal. We've been talking about putting people on pedestals and the deadly game, the totally destructive and self-destructive thing of making gods of other people just so that you can be the god maker. Like the woman puts a husband on the pedestal and makes him the boss. But what does it make her? The boss maker, greater than the boss. Don't ever doubt that when you put somebody on a pedestal, you're greater than the person that you put on the pedestal. You've created them and manipulated them to recognize you, the God maker, greater than the God. This is my beloved Son in whom is well pleased. And they are meant to honor you. And this game that you play with one another, you're caught up in that game, is totally hypnotic and totally violating to your true identity. And the more this game goes on, the more you take your identity from that person, and the more they take something from you. There are some people who know how to play that game better than you do. And we're going to be talking about that, because if I start to talk about this, I won't stop. And this is an audience participation program. But I just want to say that there are some people who know, for instance, some churches and organizations, they know they allow some sociopath minister. The word is sociopath. He plays the game. He knows the weakness, human weakness, and he lets himself be worshipped and loved that way, and loves back and acknowledges, and so that the people become enslaved. And he gets his power from your failing, because it is a failing to do that with someone, you see? Because he knows that once you start taking your identity from him, that you're totally dependent on him. And eventually they start to pull rank. They start to make demands, as in a marriage. You put somebody on the pedestal, the little lady seems so sweet and so nice and so supportive, right? And then you love her because you feel like a king. But now all of a sudden, the sense of being king is coming from her, that you made a god out of her, a goddess. But now the sense of who you are is coming from her. She can pull that away any time by giving you disapproval. She can withdraw that and make you feel like you're falling apart, make you feel terribly guilty, that you'll do anything to get that approval back, that you'll do anything, pretty soon you'll find yourself subject to that person's will. It's the same with the drug addict and the drug pusher. The drug addict in his crazy little mind thinks he is being worshipped, he is being served. The pusher rises to the occasion of need and fixes his illusion. In his mind, in the psychotic state, the chemical, hypnotic psychotic state he lives in, he thinks he's being served by the pusher's considerations. That's why marriages fall apart. And you see, the pusher, what does he get? The person who allows themselves to be put on the pedestal to play the game religiously or drug-wise in marriage, what do they get? They get power from the failing of the person, providing the fix. But then you have to do the will of that person in order to get another fix. See that? And boy, you are in a fix. Now remind me, before I take this first discussion from this gentleman here, in case I forget, about people at work, working creatively and working for approval of, like artists and people who seem to be very creative in a psychotic state, because it fits in very well with what I've just said. Go ahead.
No.
You don't have to do that.
Okay. No, it come back
You
earlier.
pull your neck back right in. He'll do it.
No, it come back to an earlier point that you made about playing football or something like that, the football game.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say that the madness that I don't know, seem like you can, if you're standing on the outside looking in with all the rough tackling and everything. I played football before, so I know what it's like a little bit out there, you know.
I was captain of my first and second 11 in England.
I'm just talking about
Football, but we call
dirty football, you know. So
soccer.
Yeah, you know. So, but what I'm saying is, though, the madness, like, you know, can you imagine if someone up of a higher source was looking down at everybody pounding on each other like that, you know, and
You think they were
and
plumb
do
mad.
it in anger and fear, and it's almost like going back to the Roman days and what have you, and all
That's
the
right.
gladiators and people out there that's cheering,
it's coming to that.
cheering the pain on.
It's coming to that.
And people out there almost breaking each other's necks and, you know, and what have you.
Well,
which-
because it's very important for them to win. Because you see, each person is rooting for their own side, and each person is the spirit of the little puppet. They're the god of this little creation, and and failure would reflect upon the person that does the rooting. See, and success reflects well upon the person who does the rooting, because each individual feels like he's made that person win. And I've had problems with me, for example. People who I help, and I do help quite a number of people, they very often say, "Oh, Mr. Masters, you've helped me such a lot." Now, some people mean that, and I don't get egotistical, but there are some clever ones who are not helped at all, but they pretend to be helped. And they put on such a purring quality, you know, that I have to be very careful not to be honored by that. See, because if I'm honored by that, that I begin to feel like I've cured that person, ego. Or immediately I've come down to accept that praise. The minute I come down to accept the praise, I've got a condition called pride. And now I'm no longer in control of the situation. And the person is not really getting well. Now they get worse. Now if I've accepted the credit, I also have to take the blame. Now I have to work harder to help her. And pretty soon she eats me alive. A lot of psychiatrists die from that. Okay? Yes, this gentleman here.
Okay, I said, I was talking earlier, I guess last night, about the same subject matter. This is about a relationship that I had going for maybe 4 years.
And it's
And all of a sudden it dissolved, you know, all of a sudden
she ran off with another
she
man.
ran off. She ran off and got married to another man. And, you know, this was out of the clear blue sky with a minute's notice, and she didn't even notify me. She was just gone.
Right. It's a very, very
And-
common situation,
right.
you know.
And of course
All,
that...
all you lesser gods have the
Right,
same problem.
all lesser gods. And immediately, you know, my emotions and my feelings came to
Anger,
the surface,
anger.
and anger and resentment.
Betrayal.
And right, and I
Emptiness.
felt all these things, the emptiness you were talking about earlier.
Sure.
It was there, you know, and
She
it was
pulled the rug from under you.
right. It was real, you know.
Now she's got
and
some other...
Yeah, I screamed out like a manchi, you know, and saying, you know, I'd come
Don't
back.
say
I'm,
it here,
I'm
don't-
praying to God, you know, to bring her back. I'm going insane over this thing, but it's taken me.
You were going...
to get back to-
hold a second.
Okay.
You were going insane all the time. You thought you were going sane.
Well, that's true.
The better you feel, the worse you get. But then when the person pulls the illusion away, you realize how bad you are. That's like waking up, your house on fire. Remember we said that in the first segment of the program. See? And that's really a good thing, but the trouble is you feel anger. And anger is another, look, anger creates a greater need. Let's see if I can put it this way, because I've talked about anger a lot, how it's the other horn on the goat. Love and hate is two horns on the same goat. So that when you become angry at someone, either pulling rank and finding them in control, discovering that they are the power and you're the wimp, right? You're the subject. That's just all an illusion. You're going to discover that. And especially when a woman pulls the rug from under you and then takes her body and finds somebody else to worship her, and this is your God, see?
Right.
That somebody else has, and you feel violated because you feel somebody's screwing around with your God.
That's true. That's right.
So you feel what they feel. It's a horrible feeling. It's a terrible feeling of rage and revenge. You actually feel violated when somebody violates with your God, messes with your God. So the rage is even a greater fix, because the more you hate the person, listen to this very carefully, the more you hate the person, so you have a love relationship, which is a total ego thing, where you immerse yourself and you draw out of that immersion an illusion. And the distraction of this relieves you of guilt, so you feel innocent. At the same time, at that very moment you're involved in drawing, feeling the relief, the release, which is a release from guilt. You also feel like you're becoming something which you are not, which you could discover if the relationship would break down. Okay? Now, the relationship does break down, and now you have a hate. Now, what does hate do? Hate is the same reaction. Remember, love and hate are both reactions to an external source. And it is well proven in psychology already that pleasure and pain, excitement of pleasure and the stimulation of pain, those things are just as debilitating as one another. The pain is, pleasure is just destructive to the human condition as pleasure is just as destructive as pain is. So if you think, for example, that you've been hurt by somebody, and that you can go to somebody else or even to the same person and try to make up to them and get their pleasure, because sometimes the love-hate is fixated to the same person, sometimes you run from one to the other. One person hurts you, another person loves you, and that person becomes the hurt, and then the hurt, the pleasure becomes pain. And then you may go to another person, or you try to make it with that person, you know what I mean? So the involvement becomes deeper when you're angry, because pleasure does not save you. Pleasure does not save you, but separates you further from the real answer, and makes you addicted, or love pleasure, your involvement with, is destructive because it destroys the real self and only reinforces a false self as if it were real, an illusion self, which illusion always breaks down in the light of reality, or when someone pulls away the rug or starts to pull rank and reveals themselves for what they really are all along. As always, when you have a love relationship that's false like that, you're going to see behind that beautiful face this is ugly thing. Is that right?
Well, it's true. See, I went through this. I went through all the resentment. I went through all the anger and all these hate thoughts that went through my mind,
And
you know.
the point?
And, okay, the point is I came out on the other side of that, and then realizing where she's not really at fault for being what she is.
It's your fault.
And, right. She's not really at fault for being at what she is.
You appointed her
Yeah.
to escape.
But I have to forgive her.
You have to forgive her now, that's right. You do have to forgive her.
She doesn't even know what...
No, but it's your fault. you men, whose fault is it that drug pushers are what they are? Is it the drug pusher's fault? No, it's the addict's fault. It's a supply and demand. Men in their condition, in that fallen condition, see, have actually exchanged gods. See, in other words, What was it in the garden that was so powerful appeal? It was to become a god, knowing good from evil, to decide your own right and wrong in life. But a selfish being evolved from that relationship with Eve. And Eve has the corner of the market, she always has. Now, what happens is a displacement of gods from the Spirit of God on one side of man's soul, inward, where had remained true, saying, put the apple down, Eve. I didn't want to become prideful. I don't want to rebel. I want to be true to myself, okay? Like a Colonel North and a Fawn Hall. They would have been great in the garden. See, nothing would have gone wrong there. We wouldn't have been here, though. That's the only problem. Yeah, I'm not saying that sarcastic. I think they're just two nice people. And I wish we'll all become that way, but we will, if you understand what I'm saying. But what you see what happened is the condition, the transplanting, the transposing of one God for another in Adam. See, because whatever makes you God is your God. See? And now it's an external thing. In order to maintain the idea that you're God and that you are something that you're not, the stubbornness of it involves a deeper, love-hate relationship, an admiration thing. You have to love, be romantic. That's what romance is all about. That's what all the religions are all about. Creating something more beautiful, Liberace's. You don't mind how much money they get. You give them. And Rajneesh with 92 Rolls Royces. Nobody minds being impoverished by that because there's something even deeper that we are getting from giving up something. We don't mind spending a lot of money on our girlfriends, fur coats and cars. We impoverish ourselves because then we made something very glorious. And then we involve ourselves in this glorious thing because that's how we become glorious. We take a little bit of the glory from that. But they take us for all we have. And they actually diminishing us because the whole process is a revisiting of the original sin, reinforcing the fallen state by an involvement with the people, places, and objects that we glorify, that keep us distracted, see, and released from guilt, while providing the illusion that we are becoming something that we're not. And it's a very dangerous condition, human condition, and unless this is completely understood, we're not going to survive it. Because we're drawing up hell. Every man knows, after he's been married for a while, to a woman who succeeds in wearing the pants, that she has actually becomes, the mask of beauty falls away and she becomes an ugly old witch, right? And she dominates and just enjoys aggravating and running his life, right? Right into the ground, making more and more unreasonable demands, confounding and confusing even the children to pick up that same identity, which is from her. See? So that the men children are programmed from the day they're born practically to be romantically involved with a woman so they can complete who they are. See, men's sense of completeness is always external, from a woman to religion, drugs, music, hero worshipping, something or other, because we don't have a true identity. And the whole process is selfish and stubborn. It reinforces an ego rebellion against God to be our own God. And yet, what we are is dogs. But dogs that don't want to realize they're dogs, but are more stubborn in this God game. See? Yes.
You've been speaking about pridefulness, but I am confused as to whether or not there is a good sense of pride.
No, there isn't. It doesn't exist. You take pride in nothing. To my way of thinking, and you can disagree even if you want to, that there's a supreme ego in the universe and it isn't me. And it isn't you. It isn't any of us. So if there is a pride, if we are prideful, we've got really nothing to be proud of. If you're proud of your children, it's because you've made them. But if you've made them, there's nothing to be proud of, because you've ruined them, I guarantee you.
If
See?
If you've set out for a certain kind of degree of accomplishment, and you've attained it for yourself,
nothing to be proud of.
Do you
because,
not?
No, you don't want to know something? Just look at a leaf. Take your work. Let's say you're a Rembrandt, and you painted this beautiful work of art. And now you take a leaf or take a Rembrandt painting a leaf, you'll see who the people worship, what the people worship. They worship the painting because it's a thing of pride. You worship that which you want to become yourself. You glorify that which glorifies you. You know, if you can't paint, but you'll be the judge of painting. You can't paint at all. You can't do near as well as the painter. But then you sit on a board and you judge the painting, and then you're greater than the painter, you see? But when you look at a leaf you've painted, it boggles the mind of the complexity and the beauty and the artistry. It puts you to shame. There's nothing you can do that's worth a tinker's cuss. And as soon as you realize that and stop being proud of this and saying, look at me, everyone, see how nice, smart. Everybody is, there's 5 billion gods in the world, all trying to compete with each other to be gods, and that's what's wrong with this world. We're knocking each other, knocking us down, building ourselves up, building others up, being urinated on, you know, that sort of thing.
Well, then, is there a distinction between judging and evaluating?
I don't understand the question. My mind doesn't work like that. I mean, I will not judge. I will not say he is good or he is bad. I will just see them for what they are. I can see a person behaving in a nice way, and I observe that. And a person's wrong, I observe that. But I don't judge them. I don't become emotionally involved in becoming a god through a judgment. See, because what does a God do? What does a God? He judges good and evil. You see? But there is an ultimate judge. There is an ultimate ego of the universe, which is not us, which we are trying to be. Now, the way we get to be him is to judge, to become emotionally involved, to making a pronouncement on something. See? He is good, and I have decided that good. See? And the moment you do that, you're caught up, and there are people who can manipulate you by creating a very good first impression, because once you've made a good first impression on a person, they don't like to admit they were wrong about you. You can take some of those con artists so good, they can fleece little old ladies for everything they got, and you can put them right in the court. And then the lawyer will say, now, did this man take from you? He's, oh, well, I guess he didn't mean it, you know. She won't testify, because she wants to believe that he's a good person because she originally did, and she can't admit she's wrong. And then you got the opposite, when you make a judgment of a person and you judge them bad, and then the new light is thrown on it, and you realize you've made a mistake. But you won't realize your mistake. You just keep on being prejudiced. See? Now, the idea of prejudice, the reason why, it's a very good place to bring this in here. White people are prejudiced against black people for the most part. I'm not, but I know that most people are. And why is that? Why would they take a color? Because you can't change your color. See? Because you can't change the color, so therefore you never have to be wrong. See? It's insanity. But it's much safer. It's very safe. It's all egotism. All prejudice is egotism. A very dangerous form of it. Anyway, so how do I discern judgment and seeing good and evil in a humble, non-judgmental way, where the light is showing me what it is, but I haven't decided what it is. See? I reserve judgment. Therefore, I give up my pride at that moment. I have an I don't know attitude. Well, he looks like a good person, and that's bad, but you don't know others. The new light could be thrown on anything. The bad person could become a good one, and the good one can become a bad one. And if you're not very careful, people play little games with you. One minute they're nice, and one minute they're cruel, and they confuse you, and pretty soon you're subject. You'll get out of your guilt, you'll do anything they want, see? Then they give you approval. Now you're finished. Now you find yourself the extension of the temptation that you've fallen prey to. You've become a little god dependent on something that's tempted you to by the judgments of 1 minute you judge you see them as good, and that minute they give you a hard time, and then you're all upset, and pretty soon they change faces, and they're nice, and you get so confused, you know where you're coming and going. See? See that?
But
And the guilt, you start to get, you want something from them to take your guilt away, because they seem to have caused the guilt. So you now bow and scrape and do what they want, because if they love you, they take up their love can take away guilt because their cruelty or whatever it is giving it to you. See? All that's happened is you've fallen away from your real self. And that's what you have to come back to. You go to Las Vegas and you lose your money. Las Vegas violates you right away. But how do the gambler deal with that? He seems to think that what he's lost, see, he's lost some of his soul actually, and some of his soul, something that's been lost to him is now in Las Vegas. And he tries to get his own back, because he's got to get it back from the outside. When the more he tries to get his own back, if he wins, he's encouraged. He gets very excited. He gets very prideful. Wow, see, I'm something. I've discovered the secret. He feels very prideful. But that pridefulness is addicting. He's got to win more, because he's not satisfied with what he's got, because there's always a guilt concerning what he's got, so which can be lost by getting more. See, if you get more, then it takes away guilt. See, because you are more, by that same token we were talking about before. So what's really lost is a relationship with self. But you always try to get it back from the outside. So people who can disturb you and violate you take you away from your inside and create guilt and create an identity that seeks the love of the world. See? It seeks that love of the world, and you're always looking for approval, looking for love, looking for something on the outside to make you happy, and it makes you more miserable. And those people who understand how to play that game in religion, in gambling, in music, in sex and marriage, all those sociopaths and psychopaths, they rule us and they will destroy us. Okay? We're going to pause here, and remember tomorrow evening we're going to have another program. I'd like to remind the listeners that, the viewers, that we only have so much money, and when it runs out there won't be a program, and I'm just not going to tell you when. I'm just going to pull the plug and that's it. And I've spent a lot of money on this program so far, very little response, and enough to pay a quarter or a third. It varies every week. So would you please, the 600 people out there, I need $20 a month. That's it. That's all I need from 600 people, if you would. If you want to send more, we appreciate it. If you feel this program's helped you, then why would you let it go? I mean, this is a window of opportunity that's never happened before. No one's ever told you these things before. You can't find anything decent on television, except me. Thank you very much, and you get the materials to teach you how to get into a different state of mind where you can control what's going on in your life rather than being controlled. Thanks for listening, and join us in the next program.
The foundation of human understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And my name's Roy Masters. And we're talking about, well, ego and pride and putting people on pedestals. And I'll start this segment off by just connecting it to other programs, the last program, those of you who've watched, and giving it a basis for those of you who haven't watched to understand what we're saying. Now, there's a condition called pride and ego, and this ego requires approval from other egos. And we elect these egos, or we elect these other gods to say that we are gods. One of the conditions, one of the typical condition of an ego is it's always seeking approval, but it lives in a psychotic state. It lives in this mental world because only in this mental world can the pride or psychotic ego think it is something that is not. Because if it would stand outside reality, outside the dream state, it would realize it was nothing. So to avoid becoming nothing, becoming annihilated by the inner light, it lives and dwells in an Alice in Wonderland world of fantasy. And it stays there to avoid reality, and in this fantasy it finds ways to get itself worshipped. Now, a typical situation is this. You find people enslaved to their work. They're very good workers. They may be an artist working for some big company, and they work for 20, 30 years, and they produce well. Someone's going, me. And everybody thinks what a wonderful worker they are, and they work hard, and of course when they get fired from when they retire, they get a gold watch and nothing, and they get, no appreciation at all. But during that time, spending all their energies, all their life producing, outproducing, doing well, getting approval from the bosses, working hard, currying favor. Now you see a person like that as a little wind-up toy, a slave of approval. But that person does not see himself as a slave any more than the drug addict sees himself as an addict, but he sees, when he gets the fix, as someone giving him a fix for his ego. And there was a feeling of pride, of being loved, of being served. You see, a man gets his fix from the female. The drug addict gets his fix from the drug pusher. And the drug pusher does not be seen in the drug addict's mind as the one who is Lord. But in his own mind, he thinks he is the Lord, being served by the Lord, that which he is appointed to serve him. He's a God, he's a lesser God, but in his mind he's created this bigger God to validate his sense of being God. And so when he manipulates, curries favor, he's really not serving, but he's really manipulating for that approval. And we can also create for approval. We can work for approval, work hard, and produce, and outproduce, and feel like we're creators. So when people give us this approval, when the boss gives us approval, we think that we are something that we're not. We don't see us, in other words, we don't see ourselves as a slave for approval, which we really are. But we see the smile of the boss and the appreciation of the boss and the applause, well done, because it's the boss that's getting all the advantages. He is really the God. In reality, he is the God of us. But in our mind, in our feverish little egotistical minds, in our little world of imagination, we think we are creators. See? And so there are troubles with this. Sometimes things go wrong. You could spend your whole life thinking you're a creator and really get nowhere, but just getting, love and respect and sort of living off of that and dying through it, not knowing that that's what life and death is all about. But there are some people, and this is, I wonder if you've ever had this happen to you. There are some people who are so caught up in getting approval from somebody, they start a new job, and here it starts, that they are so concerned with what the boss thinks, that they're going to do the job perfectly, and they're going to anticipate what the boss is thinking to do it just the way they think the boss thinks to get that approval. But the point is, he's not using any common sense. So he makes a big mess, and the boss yells at him instead. Anybody laughing over that? Anybody feeling that? Now, they're all upset, and they're all feeling very guilty. They try again. They try to anticipate what the boss wants to get because they want to get the approval of this boss, and they want to do what the boss wants them to do. But what the boss really wants them to do is to use their common sense, if he's a good boss. But they imagine what the boss, they have an idea of what the boss wants them to do, and they do it so mechanically and so clumsily, they make a fool of themselves and do everything wrong. The only true guidance of anything is common sense. But we are so caught up in wanting approval from somebody that you lose your common sense, and after a while you can't do anything right. Who knows what I'm talking about? Anybody had that problem? Yes.
I'd just like to ask you a question. You know, I can recall years back, this was before maybe I got completely engrossed in this psychotic state. And years back I can recall that, you know, people would tell me things like at work, and my better sense told me, don't react to that. You know, I don't have to react to that.
But you do.
But yet there was that thing in me that said, I have to react to that because society reacts to that way.
No, it's not.
You see what I mean?
But you see, that's not quite. I know what you're saying, but let me tell you the real reason why you have to react to it. Listen carefully. The pride is a creature or a reaction addict. See, because temptation, if somebody puts money in front of you, there's always a little excitement. If you're going to steal for the first time, there's always this temptation, excitement which separates you from your conscience. Because see, this excitement anesthetizes the conscience sufficiently, if it is your will, to permit you to do the wrong thing, to steal. The moment you've stolen, you've been displaced. You're no longer functioning in a resistant way to stress and pressure and temptation on the environment. You're no longer immune from your environment, but now you're addicted to your environment because the creature self, the identity which is of the temptation, it's pride. It's the brainchild of pride. To do wrong and to be tempted to be wrong is the nature of the spirit of the devil, if you want to put it mildly. Now this spirit inside you is addicted to stress or temptation, and it must react. Why must it react? Can you see why it must react now? Anybody can see why the spirit that is the fallen spirit, which is a creature of reaction, has to go on I'm actually saying it has to go on reacting in order to be a creature of reaction, or it wouldn't be anything at all. See? So therefore there is always social pressures trying to make you egotistical, because once you become egotistical, you are become the brainchild of society. Now we're coming around to your words. And society, the spirit of society, is the spirit of the dark side that has ruled this world and caused mayhem and chaos and tragedy and disease and wars and suffering and divorce and child beating and molest. This is the spirit that grows up inside us. As long as we continue to react, we are escaping in that reaction. We're experiencing something called release or relief from guilt. And as I said in the last segment, we're experiencing something called pride. But then the pride is more of what it ought not be, conflict. See? And the conflict, if we don't have something to react, we will cease to exist. Because we feed on, in other words, we feed on excitement, love, hate, an exciting new car, an exciting new woman, an exciting new election, exciting new ball game. We must have reaction, because the reaction distracts, pulls the ego, the pride, away from realizing itself in a negative way and realizes itself in a pseudo-positive way. Who understands that point? Good. Now, does that make the point for you? I answered so completely. You don't have any more questions? Okay, so anybody have any questions? Yes. Always that bright lady over there.
I'd like for you to go back and talk about something that you said you wanted to be reminded of 2 seconds ago.
I did that just now.
Creative people?
Yeah, those creative people who live in a psychotic state, being served, they curry favor and they create to get the approval of their bosses, because deep down inside they've made their boss into a pope. You know, see what I mean? They put him on a pedestal, and they create, but only so that the boss should admire their creation and say, "Well done." See, that's what a God is, in a sense. In a real God, the God that I know about, has created this whole universe with so many mysteries and marvels, and He rewards me for observing that and say, "Wow," for marveling, Because what is worship but wonder and awe? So therefore, if you sit in awe of a chicken coming out of an egg, or just look at a leaf and go out in the field, and don't get caught up emotionally in it, but just let that remind you that a God has created this. You're going to feel a warmth inside you, a life, a reward for recognizing the divine ego, not yourself. Because you're created to worship. And that what worship is, glorifying the Pope, going to church, with lengthy sing-songs and prayers and services, and is not worship. Your body is the temple. You worship by the divine ego making you aware of his creations. And you awakened to that fact that there's something greater than yourself. Worship. Trouble is we're not involved with that. We're always trying to awaken to the fact that we're the great. There's nothing greater than us. And we're involved in an external relationship, creating things, making things, seeking for approval for our behavior, for our slave state. Some of the most slavish and psychotic people think they are God. They have a huge ego in that little tiny wimp. Take a little wimp like this over here, see? She knows she is. But in that little wimp state body, she's got lots of anger and judgment. And she has lots of fantasy where she sees herself being loved and worshipped, and also sometimes as the chief executioner for all the judgments. Is that right? See? Because by giving in to a tyrant, where if they're not getting approval for that little ego state, and they're glowing like little light bulbs, if the boss doesn't approve of them and is rude, and they get all upset, they try harder to they try harder to get approval, and they don't get that approval, what have they got instead? Well, their slave state, instead of getting approval, has only got them contempt. And the boss, trying to get more approval, the boss only realizes sometimes he has contempt for that little whippersnapper. Why? Because he begins to feel himself being manipulated. So he's going to get, and then he discovers he can get more work out of that person by rejecting them. And they work harder for approval. Who goes through that state? Anybody know? You do? All right, you've seen it now. But when you can't get that approval for your ego, what have you got? If you can't get love, what do you have? Hate. And what is hate? That's also an ego condition, isn't it? Because what is God but king and judge? King is worshipped. Approve of me, everybody. Recognize my creations. Look at what I've done for you, right? Slave state, really, but the psychotic doesn't know that, doesn't want to realize it, caught up in the little tidbits of approval like a trained seal. Doesn't see it's a trained seal. Hate. The giving of oneself to the tyrant, making that tyrant more tyrannical. Well, you're actually creating evil now, aren't you? God has created evil for judgment, for his judgment taking. Deep down inside the psychotic state of mind is that judgment. Now you're addicted to doing something for someone who is wicked to you, just so you can enjoy judging. Is that right? Okay. Thank you for asking the question. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Masters. I've listened to your program for some time now, and I can really identify with the problems I've created with pride. I started to meditate about 1.5 years ago, and I've had real mixed results, and I was wondering maybe if you could explain the solution to all this a little better to me.
If you can sort of capsulize.
All right, for example, after meditating for about 3 months, I realized that cigarette smoking was just totally wrong. So I sent for your tape, How to Stop Smoking, and instantly overnight, it was removed from me. After 20 years of smoking, I just didn't smoke
No
anymore.
withdrawal symptoms?
Nothing.
Does that validate the things I've been saying about it?
I didn't remember that I smoked the following day until I saw someone else light a cigarette. But I became concerned because I felt that maybe I was becoming hypnotized rather than dehypnotized.
Well, it's possible that you could have been caught up with me hypnotically.
Because later on, as time went on, things happened that weren't quite as good. My family entirely broke up, came apart, and I lost a wife and 3 children. And I was totally devastated, and I was surprised, too. I really was surprised.
Shall we explore that for a moment?
Sure.
Because, you know, I'm not guilty of trying to hypnotize people, but
It's not my point.
no, I know, but the point is people do because they're so externalized, they have no inner base, so that the only relationship they have is to be caught up with something external to themselves. So they go from one religion to another, and they go from food to smoking and smoking. They break one habit with another, and they go from one woman to another woman saves them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite possible that you may have been caught up with me as a means of escaping from whatever. Actually being caught up with Roy Masters hypnotically and putting me on a pedestal and becoming involved with me emotionally that way can have the effect of breaking the drug habit or even the smoking habit, and without any withdrawal symptoms at all, because you're substituting the approval and the excitement from me. See? So in other words, it does the same thing. It dulls the guilt by being caught up with a religious teacher, an exciting personality that loves you, and is teaching you truth.
That's possible, but
I doubt it happened to
very
you.
wary in the beginning of you and your teachings, and I listened a year to you before I would use your tapes.
And so when you use the tapes, did you feel close to me? Did you?
Not to you particularly, but to your teachings. Not to you as a person.
You understood the principles.
Yeah, almost instantly.
Good, that's fine. Now, I'm quite sure that it wasn't hypnotic. I'm quite sure what happened to you at that moment was revelation.
A physical thing happened too inside of my chest. My heart, I believe, moved and turned.
So that's a perfect
It actually
symptoms.
moved in my body. I was
Yeah,
amazed.
it feels like
Yeah, exactly.
something turned around the other way. Like,
Scared the hell out of me. Too.
Yeah.
Very
appropriate.
Thought I was going.
now the only thing, now, I'm sure now that this was not a problem of being caught up with me.
Okay.
I'm quite, because you seem kind of sane and sensible and rational even now as you're talking to me. Otherwise you'd be trembling if you're caught up with me. People are caught up with me, they tremble a lot. And they think about, when they think, they say, what would Roy think? See? And you see what I'm saying? And then you know that you're sort of too involved. And then you read my teachings day and night, and you don't understand what I'm saying, but you think by reading more you'll understand more and learning more, and you can actually, And then when you find out that you're completely caught up with Roy Masters, and that all of a sudden I'm in control of you, because you're seeking my approval and reading all my works and being caught up with me, so that you have no more control of yourself. When it catches up with you that it is the case, and I will always try to see that it catches up with you, if it is all possible, then what happens to the individual is they blame me for their own weakness. They hate me, and they run as far as they can to my teachings, and they become a Baptist or something. See? They join the Jehovah's Witnesses or something. So they go completely to the other extreme, and now they're really hypnotized, but they'll never realize that they are. See? Because there's a relationship there that guarantees no realization of the caught-upness, and so the game of ego continues until they die. Rather? But in other words, what they think, they just by following the teaching, they're always right, never wrong. I won't go into that right now. Now your family. Your family. Am I right in saying that when you woke up and you gave up smoking and gave up some strange ways, your wife saw some strength in you, and you no longer would cow down to your wife anymore and bow and scrape and be romantic, and
It's basically correct. Yeah.
and then she began to think that you run around with other women, or you become queer, or
No, she felt I became too domineering or controlling because now
Were you?
I had a different opinion of a lot of things.
well, in other words, she couldn't control you. In other words, am I saying that? Am I hearing that she was in control of you at one time, before that time? That's the reason why you were smoking, because you didn't want to see something.
Probably. The relationship wasn't
right.
formed in heaven to start with.
It wasn't right to
but
begin
it was,
with your
but it
wife.
was getting better. At least I thought it was getting better up until, by the way, just an aside, she really rebelled against studying any of your teachings or listening to your program, which
that's
was a
typical.
bone of contention between us.
There are a lot of women who think that I hate women.
Yes, exactly. That was.
And now that's the first thing that comes out of her mouth, is that Roy Masters hates women.
Yes.
And if she's one of those women, I'm very sorry that you ever married that type of person, because I don't really hate women, but what I despise, what I'm against, of course, is what Christ is against, is the spirit of the woman. What do you think Christ came to save us from? Not from women, but from the spirit of the woman. Because as I've been teaching, and as you've seen in your own life, the whole world is controlled by the spirit of the woman. You see, everything that's wrong with us, it's pride, having gone before the fall. It's being sustained by worldly affections, which are all feminine. See, and feminine spirit oriented. Like the rock and roll musicians are not manly, they're feminine.
That's true.
You see, everything, and even the politicians of the world, they're not masculine, they're manipulative. See, dominating and manipulative, that's feminine. Masculine is gentle, understanding, wise. He's not willful. He has a strong will, but not willful. You can't confuse him and make him do anything you want, but he won't lay his will upon you. And recognizing that the man won't lay his will upon you, but just won't be willed, won't be overcome by a manipulating spirit. The spirit of the woman is very vexed and angry because it's used to having its way through subtle and slithery means. You see what I mean? And it's the same thing with when you're married to a woman like that, when she sees that you have a brightness in you and that you can no longer be acted through and that you are taking charge of her children, taking her children away from her.
That's a very good point, because she felt very threatened with the children.
See, that's right.
Extremely threatened.
So I'm very sorry,
So
but
am
I mean, that almost happened to me when I became enlightened, but it was a struggle, and most of the time, if you hold your ground, you can win your woman back, because not all women are like that. Because most women will balk a little bit. They'll sit down on their haunches a little bit and complain and think you're queer for a bit because you're no longer amorous and want sex and wanted to mother you, and she can't get that feeling of superiority and security and power from your weakness anymore, which she's addicted to. That's all there is between you. There's no love. That's security. That's all she's got. The security is your addiction, your worship, see, and that kind of dope pusher power. You know what I mean? so that most women, all of you will experience to some degree that a woman will react that way, but after a while, if you hold your ground, they kind of like it. They like that you're manly, but otherwise they're going to accuse you of being willful and dominating and powerful and hating women and listening to that creep Roy Masters, that woman hating so-and-so. So I'm very sorry about that.
I just a final question, if I may. I've meditated now for almost 2 years. If a person continues in sincerity, do you ever reach a level that you speak of, that state of grace where a person is perfectly at ease with himself, his world, his God?
Well, I haven't got there yet.
Ah, good.
I don't know what the end of the tunnel is. I don't know. You perceive me better than I perceive myself. So I really, my wife has always said, Roy, you've got some kind of power. You're different from everybody else. And up to just a few years ago, I didn't know what she was talking about. See, and I really didn't. And then just a couple of years ago, I kind of woke up and realized I do have something. But if I realized it before, maybe it would have gone to my head. See what I mean? So, and it would have destroyed it. So I kind of know that I'm different, and I kind of know I have a power. But then, unless you really bring it to my attention, I never think of it.
Thank you.
But it's growing. Whatever this is, I think it grows from everlasting to everlasting, to coin a corny phrase. But you know what I mean. And I think that death and life have two directions. I think that hell gets deeper and more self-defeating and more self-destructive and more painful. And I think heaven is the opposite direction, that life comes to life and goes on eternally. That one is to death and one is away from death. And I know that Christ was right and the scriptures are correct about man, not animals. They never can understand. The ego of the beast cannot understand. The animals do have egos. I'm sure that my daughter works with animals and tigers and lions, and there's no question, she says, and I agree with her, that the animal is ego. And when you fall into your animal, when you sin, you come into your animal, and it's the spirit of that animal well, animals don't have that kind of ego that we can have, because of temptation we fall to the animal, and we also fall to the spirit of the ego animal, which is Satan, evil. Oh, I'm sorry, we're running out of time. It's getting a little bit heavy here. I just want to remind the viewers that we are experiencing some difficulty in supporting this program, and if I can get 600 people at $20 a month to support the program, it'd be very nice. I can't spend the whole program begging for funds, because otherwise it wouldn't be educational. I'll leave that to Mr. Baker and Oral Roberts and people like that who spend the whole time panhandling for money, but we do need the money. So here's the book, and there's some cassettes that teach you to meditate, and please support the program and get started on the meditation the young man was talking about. I suggest to the viewers that when you finished watching this program, that if you're moved, that you write to the address at the end of the program for the materials to teach you how to control your subconscious mind. It should be controlled by your realizations, progressive, and you should have access to your lower self, because otherwise, if you don't do that, the world around you will control that animal reactive self, that conditioned reflex response self, and you'll be dragged along like a stone in a stream. You'll be caught up with that current and never be able to live your life the way it ought to be lived. And this is what's wrong with all of us. And this evening we're talking about, well, as a matter of fact, we've had 4 programs on the subject of pride. Is this the 5th one? This is the 4th? Oh, all right. On the subject of pride and egotism and putting people on pedestals. And there's some questions in the audience concerning, yes.
What I have to say is about the last time that, on the last show when you were talking about how you get caught up in trying to get your boss's approval, and
Right.
I see that happening in me in my marriage. I try to get my husband's approval, and when he doesn't give it to me his approval is he appreciates what I've done or sex. And when I see that he doesn't give that, that makes me very angry, and it's like an anger, a rage that takes over that I feel I have no control over. And I'm wondering, how can you learn to control this? I mean, how do you start to, if you can see it, is
don't
that
you
a
see,
start?
If you could see that you are an approval addict, and that approval has something to do with validating the sense of being God and being prideful.
Well, I don't feel like God, though.
But
I
feeling
feel
fr-
like a wimp more.
Ah, yes, but you see, there's always a downside to the up.
Uh-huh.
Everything that lifts you up lets you down, and everything that makes you, it's called, in psychological terms, it's called manic depressive. Everything that lifts you up, buoys up your ego, actually causes you to be caught up in the downdraft. So when everyone offers approval, and you come down to accept it, to become involved with a good feeling from it, and the relief it gives you from guilt by being caught up in the ecstatic emotions, then your condition has deteriorated as a result of that, so that you are less of a person as a result of being approved of, and not better. You are actually less. And so therefore, after the emotion has passed, the excitement has passed, you will feel demeaned, you will feel degraded, drained, or some such experience. You will feel less inferior, more inferior. Now, what does that inferiority say? It's pride doesn't want to be inferior, so it works harder. It becomes upset at realizing this state because it doesn't want to realize that state. The light of God is always making you realize you can't get away from the light, but you misinterpret what the light is saying to you, and you resent knowing. All egos resent knowing they're inferior. And how do you remedy that? You start to set your sights on finding some way to get approval again. And then in your mind, you think of ways to catch that person up in this little game and to get that approval. Now, if they give it to you, you're in big trouble.
He doesn't.
But if he doesn't give it to you, you hate. If he rejects you, you hate him. But your hate is as much a high as love is. Don't you get high on hate?
I never thought about it.
Who will agree that hate is a high. It's called a judgment. Remember what I said about an ego? Egos can thrive on two things or both. One of two. You can get high on judgment and always hate people and contempt for people and really be a mean toad, right? Right? Or you can always have little rose-colored glasses on and be a little woman from one of those positive thinking churches. See no wrong in everyone and everybody loves you for seeing no wrong in them. And then walk around and high as a kite thinking you're wonderful for making everybody else wonderful, and everybody thinks you're wonderful for seeing them as wonderful, and everything's wonderful while the whole world's falling apart. Right? Including yourself. But you can have those extremes, or you can go between the two. See, but now, when you become rejected then, after all of your attempts, you feel, here I am, I'm giving all this love, and God is being rejected. You feel like God being rejected in His heaven. After all, you're not appreciated. You're not acknowledged. Doesn't know what God wants to be acknowledged in real life. He rewards us with life and love for acknowledging Him as God, you see. We went into that just a little while ago, didn't we? But so you have to recognize that you're going to get a high whether you love or hate. Loving and being loved, hating and being hated is just as detrimental. Now, what is the root of this? The root of this is that if you could see that your need to be accepted is a deadly sin. That just because all the other jerks, psychiatrists and psychologists, they have a strange way of finding out what is normal. They go to 250 Americans and they have this questionnaire about being loved and about sex, contraceptives, everything else. And then they can tally up all these questions and find that everybody does the same dumb thing and call it normal. But they forget that they're taking a poll of sinners. See? So the different stages of being jerks. All the way down from to homosexuals and beyond. But they all have these strange needs to be loved and worshipped. And some people, after they get the approval, they want to kill everybody. Because when you get approval, you find it's done you in. So you want to do it, you want to do in the thing that's done you in. Follow that? So it's why we have love, hate, murders. So what you have to recognize then is that needing approval, contrary to psychological acceptance, beliefs, is absolutely a form of insanity. And that we have hero worship relationships, whether it's churches, whether it's romance, whether it's rock and roll, movie stars. Everybody wants to be a movie star, to be worshipped by the audience and acclaimed and loved, and people going wild and glorifying you. This is all a madness. This is all madness, and that we should get out of that. Now, let's say you have married to a husband who wants your approval, because men want approval even as women do, right? Let's say you wake up and you discover that your husband feels, you find yourself looking for the approval of your husband and bowing and scraping and giving him sex to make him happy, hoping that is love for you, and it isn't. It's only an encouragement, a validation, an encouragement for you to be a wimp for him, you see, and to become a whore for him, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which makes you feel ugly instead of beautiful.
Well, I find that sex drained you. I mean, since he started denying it, and I started accepting it, I find that I feel a whole lot better without it. You are better without it. But we'll come to that, because I don't want everybody to turn off the TV set, right? You're talking about all those ego animals out there, you know where the goodies are, don't you? They're all down there in their lower regions. Below their belt they live. All those egotistical people. I just love that one. I can never resist it. But anyway, now when you see people wanting approval, and how do you deal with your own relationship? Through my self-relationship? Well, in other words, you have a man who wants approval, so you give him approval to get approval, and it's a game.
And then you get locked into each other, making each other's condition worse, and then beginning to hate each other because you can't understand what's going wrong with each other's life. Each suspect the other is causing them to deteriorate and doesn't know where it is. See, but we all tend to project blame. And when you hate the other person, then you feel guilty. When you feel guilty, what do you want to do? You try to get the approval of the other person again. So you curry favor and you build the ego up and do everything you can, but meanwhile, while you're building him up, he's coming down to accept that love and he's deteriorating. See? You're actually awakening his sensual desires and putting his sensibilities to sleep. And then he senses that you're making demands, that you're pulling something out of him. See, that isn't good for him to give.
Maybe it's
After he's
just-
giving you approval, he discovered he's the wimp and he's the slave of it. He may deny you that approval because he wants approval from you, and he finds himself giving it all to you. He may find himself a slave and may hate you for it and may withhold it just to upset you, to turn the tables, make you so feel guilty that you'll curry favor again. But as soon as you start to curry favor, what happens? He begins to feel like you're pulling on him and manipulating him, and he starts to become violent and starts to reject you completely, then go out with other women. You understand that story? So,
I was going to say that maybe I think that it's that you have to, instead of looking for his approval, I need to look inside myself to accept myself as what I am.
you can't accept yourself for what you are. It's impossible. Because you're not God, and you can't validate yourself. You just have to realize, stop in your tracks and realize that there's something wrong with you for needing validation from somebody else. That this whole thing called love is not love at all. But it has all traces back to this ego thing that doesn't feel secure except something's loving it. But yet, if you get love, you're made worse by it. And if you don't get love, you're made worse by it. Because when you love, you become addicted to doing more to get that love. So you become more enslaved for that love. And then your condition is worse than it was before because you're more of a slave, not of a person. And if you don't get that love, then you hate for being rejected. But then you're worse by hate. And again, you need love, but if you can't get love, you'll just become addicted to hate. Because hate is an ego condition all by itself. You don't need any love when you have lots of hate. And then you become a very sour, unhappy, miserable, enjoying your miserableness and your judgments. Enjoy making everybody miserable and not seeing anything in its true light, misinterpreting everything so that you can always get a judgment out of it. Is that right? And everybody hating you because they can see that you're judging them, and everybody ending up doing what they're being accused of anyway. Well, if I'll be judged for it, I might as well do it anyway. So you go ahead and do it, and then you get judged for it. And that your whole life is love, hate, hate, love, and total insanity. I mean, you're weaving a more complex, degenerate being with greater complexes of guilt. Greater guilt of being loved and greater guilt for being hated. Going between the two and never ending until you're dead. Follow that? No? No. All right.
Okay, Roy, what does the Bible mean when it uses the word love so many times through it?
Well, there's only, in the Bible, there's only, in English, there's only one word for love. That's the problem with you. You love ice cream, you love horse racing, you love whiskey, you love God, right? You have there's a brotherly love, and there's an erotic love, but there's only one love in the English language. We've got a problem.
What does it mean then? What does the Bible mean?
Well, the love of the world is makes you an enemy of God. So, but the Bible's not coming down to us clear enough, either because a lot of passages are missing, a lot of chapters are missing, a lot of misinterpretation. In Greek, there are 5 words for love: philia, eros, agape, and I forget the other 2. Philia is brotherly, agape is godly, and eros is sexual, sensual. But you see, look, how many different words. And even in Greek, you have more than one word for life. There's suche and zoe. One means ego animal life, and the other one means spiritual life. But you see, when it comes in the Bible, it says, "Who shall preserve his life shall lose it," and see, and who shall lose his life shall find it. that makes it very confusing. But if you translate it into both those, if you should lay down his ego, animal life, she'll pick up the spiritual life. You had different words in this, but in English you only have that one word, life, except you have the word existence. But I don't think, see, Greek is sometimes a little more expressive, although English language is very beautiful and all the rest of it. But you see, our problem is translating from one language to another with all the meanings intact, and sometimes they get lost going from Hebrew to Greek and Greek to English and that sort of thing. Or the Aramaic to Hebrew, Hebrew to Greek, Greek to English. You know, it's like a Boy Scout story.
Could I ask you one more thing? On the Adam and Eve, now I haven't read the book, so you may tell me to go home and read it first.
No,
But
I'll answer the question if I can.
okay, we have a lot of controversy about this at home. Adam meaning earth, and Eve meaning soul or spirit. Could you define that? Because every time we hear it at home, I think I always tell Mom, well, he means something deeper. He's not against women.
No, not.
And that's, I just can't get through to her. She says, well, you just read Thomas Troward. Now, he makes more sense. He goes into that, and then my aunt tells me, no, you read the Bible. Just get in there and
Yeah,
take...
but the best thing is not to listen to all those people. Just listen to yourself.
You'll
You'll understand me. You'll understand me all by yourself, and try not to discuss it with lesser beings, lesser lights.
Oh, boy.
No way to go.
Oh, boy.
Don't
tell her I think I'm going to need to watch the program.
She's not going to watch the program anymore. All right.
I just wanted your feeling on that interpretation that was from a metaphysical book, that Adam meaning earth or flesh or matter, and Eve meaning the life that
I
came.
mean, Adam and Eve. Eve was the mother of all living.
But was she you feel she was a person, or
Oh,
that's
yes.
symbolic?
As a matter of fact, science is just, I don't know why we're getting into the subject, but
I don't either.
But it's all right. I'll just I'll touch on it lightly anyway, just for the heck of it. Science has just proved that through various genetic experiments and playing with chromosomes and ectoplasms and God knows what, they've discovered, so they say, that every person now living can be traced back to one human female. Now, the fact of the matter is that one human female was either a fallen being. You had to be two types. It could be two types. It could be what the Bible says man was, created differently with a consciousness, and directly rather than evolutionarily sort of thing, made different, made directly from, and breathed life, had life breathed in as different. So it became a living soul, unlike the animals, with a little bit of God's consciousness in it. As you know, look at the difference between us and chimpanzees, what immense gulf there is. And some of us, don't even have consciousness, and we're becoming chimpanzees, if you look very carefully. Women making monkeys out of men all the time, right? So it's always been that way. But the point is, it has to be one of two things. That first human female was either some kind of Cro-Magnon, Piltdown, Neanderthal creature, and the whole human race came from that. But in which case, if that's the case, and we're just smarter animals, we shouldn't have any guilt. But we do. See? And everything we do should be natural, like all the animals. If all the animals do things naturally, they don't feel guilty about what they do. They just, monkey see, monkey do, and the sheep and the dogs and the cows and the cats, they all do what comes naturally. There's no guilt. Except man can make them guilty, beat them up for messing on the rug or something like that. You can introduce something equivalent to guilt, I suppose. But it either originates at that point, all men coming from animals becoming, and perfection and being as an evolutionary thing. After all, everything in nature is getting better. It's improving, it's evolving. We're not getting worse, but you look at your own life, is it true? Are you getting better? Why are you searching? Why are you searching? Because it's not getting better. The world's not getting any better, and you being part of the world, you're not getting better either. And if you look at the relationship between you and your wife, you and your women, you'll see exactly the same relationship between man and woman. Adam with his ego, woman supporting him with food and sex and stroking him, and men making demands on that sort of reassurance and becoming enslaved to that spirit and falling away from the life, the paradise state and the state of happiness and plenty that could be on this earth instead of the miserable conditions we now see. And remember that spirit of the garden has a lot to lose for people like me teaching things that I do. And it will say, Roy Masters hates women. And it's that spirit in a woman that says that. It's not the woman herself. Because the real woman of light, the real woman of origin, that woman that is fallen and knows she's fallen and seeks to be saved from the fallen state, she's looking for an Adam with a light. See? Who is saved from her spirit and who can save her from the spirit. Ladies, do you understand that, don't you? We're dealing here with the obvious thing that if you look in your own life, you can see the same relationship between man and woman exactly duplicated in your own life to the death. Because that's what the cause of death. That relationship which is now between you and your wife and your women is exactly that which caused death in the very beginning. And the spirit leading you to eternal death. And you fighting like cats and dogs, and your love leading to hate and hate leading to love, until you become animals, disintegrating, dying, diseased, unhappy, miserable, and your sickness being contagious to the next generation. Is that right or not? Have you come from such a home? Where have you seen that fighting among sheep? Not even wolves treat each other that way, as man treats man. Because we got man's inhumanity to man, because man has become unhuman, but thinks himself human by the help of the false love of a female, which false love the pride of man craves. Yes?
I'm wondering where that all came from. Was Eve created evil, or was she created divine?
No, we haven't got time to go into that now because we've got 5 minutes to the end of the program. Oh. We actually got a little way from the pride of man, but remember, just keeping on the subject for the last few minutes, pride goeth before the fall. And the rebellious or haughty spirit. See, because what is the spirit of pride? I started off by talking about the way man falls to the spirit of pride, away from the humble spirit. He becomes a very proud being. But at the same time, he becomes more animal. And he wants to be proud of this animal. He becomes a self-conscious animal. That's why you have the fig leaves. They cover but the fig leaves because they became self-conscious. See, so the awakening of the sensuous nature was by way of original sin. Women supporting, man falling for the forbidden fruit. Just like a drug addict reaches for drugs. Before he became a drug addict, he was in a relatively pure state. The minute he crosses that border, that temptation displaces the original person with the spirit of trauma. So now, he's no longer a person that loves what's right and is whole in himself, but is only whole outside himself. So that he loves the pusher. He needs the spirit of life in the man is no longer the spirit of life that was in the man before the fall. It's a different spirit. See, it's a different God. He's recreated in the image of woman. The spirit has wrought some kind of trauma which has changed the relationship of man's soul from God within to the God without. The spirit operating inside the woman, and everything supportive is feminine. Everything that's supportive. If you take two men in a prison cell and you leave them there, two unwashed, unregenerate beings, one will become dominant and one will become submissive. And the submissive one will start supporting the ego of the dominant one. Not only will he become a bully, an animal, beast, but the submissive one will become homosexual, the feminine counterpart. So if there wasn't any women in the world, men would make each other into fags. Because one will cause the other one to become submissive and support his ego, awaken the sexual desire for the body of the man. See, because whatever supports the ego of a man awakens the sexual desire for the very thing it awakened it for. Just like a chicken or a goose comes out of the egg, the first thing it sees, it's imprinted with, and will follow that thing even if it's a fox. See? So, all trauma is sexual. Reinforce the ego through the sexual, ego-testicle. Reinforce that. In other words, take the embarrassment away about the sexuality of that man. If a woman just takes away the embarrassment about that sexual feeling, the awkwardness, the anxiety about being a sexual being, the embarrassment for which reason he needs a fig leaf. All men are embarrassed. They walk around like that. They're naked, you know. See, so that take that embarrassment away and nurture the ego and make that body, that beast acceptable, that generating beast acceptable. And immediately you have a bigger condition of pride. The bigger condition of pride, now he's even more sexual. Because the pride is a greater awakening of the sensuality. So the man never gets enough sex, never gets enough food, never gets enough drink, never gets enough women, never gets enough of that wonderful spirit that's killing him. Have I spoken the truth to you? May I suggest you write to the foundation and learn the secret of salvation. And it's not what you think. It's not what you've been taught. And it has nothing to do with all kinds of religious excitements. It's learning to be very quiet and stepping across the other side of your soul to receive a new guidance and a new identity. It's called salvation. Tomorrow, we will continue on with our other broadcast. And please get the cassettes to teach you to meditate and the book. Join us again in our next broadcast.
The Foundation of Human Understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the Foundation of Human Understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Hello, welcome once again to our program. My name's Roy Masters. I keep forgetting to tell you who I am. Just keep listening and you find out where I'm coming from besides who I am. I guess who I am is not that important. But I'm going to talk about the pride again this evening, and it's our last segment for the week, and I hope you'll join us next week. We have these programs Monday through Friday, and I hope that you'll support the programs. You'll see enough enlightenment and enough value in it to support the programs. Anyway, I'm going to start the program off a little bit different this evening, and talking about pride and Roy Masters being a woman hater, because there's a lot of talk about me hating women, and I was watching the hearings with Judge Bork, and I heard that he was a woman hater and was against civil rights, and I knew when I heard where this outcry was coming from, it was coming from the left and the women's groups and the homosexuals and so on, all those sort of special interest weird groups. I knew immediately he must be a man. I knew he had to be a good man, so I listened, and I saw that contrary to what the women groups were saying, that he hated women and that sort of thing, same thing they say about me, he was very noble, clear-minded, logical, more logical than I've ever heard any judge be. I wouldn't mind going before his court. I'd feel I get justice there. Anyway, I saw that, and I said, wow, what a neat man. But I could see why the women's group hate him. And we've been talking a certain type of woman. And remember, there are two types of women, just like there are two types of men. So, you know, there are good ones and there's bad ones. You see, and the same with men. There's good ones and there's bad ones. There's really wicked people and there's gentlemen, good souls. And then there's also witches. You know, your mother was probably one. Poor couldn't help herself, poor thing. And your father probably brought it out of her. He couldn't help himself, poor thing. Yeah, that's typical Adam and Eve syndrome. They kill each other after a while with this strange love that they have for one another. Anyway, I realized that there's a spirit. In women, there's a certain spirit. It's a very dominating, seductive, guileful spirit. And it seduces and controls and manipulates and exchanges roles with men. So that women end up, that spirit in the home ends up by slithery means, just like politicians get in power. Haven't you noticed all the bad men in this world, the third world, is dominated by the most wicked and seductive and manipulating and tyrannical types of human beings? Despicable, the most despicable types get to the top. We're talking about evil in this world. But all of the problems of the world begin with a man-woman relationship gone wrong. You know, you take all these families, men being ruined by women and loving it, thinking they're being loved when they're being ruined, and women getting power by default of men through their seeking approval from the woman and giving them power, and then turning them into animals in the process, through a process of false love. You can see that this whole world is crazy and is dominated by the spirit of the female. It's not, men of course are responsible for all this stuff. Their failure to be men. See? And they're responding unreasonably to unreasonable pressures, to unreasonable beings. See, in woman there is a spirit. In Eve, if there was such a place as the Garden of Eden and Paradise Lost, there was a spirit on one side of woman, and on the other side in the inside of man, there was another spirit. And there was a war between these two spirits. And had Adam not yielded to this idea to be prideful, to become a god, see, had he not gone to the other side and fallen to that seduction and become impregnated with that spirit and become addicted to the love of that spirit, not the woman, but the love of the spirit in her, the woman, to sustain his ego and to sustain his rebellion so he didn't have to admit he was wrong, but always be right through that love, the world will be a different place. You understand all this now. So therefore, when I start speaking about this relationship, immediately the spirit of that woman in those types of women says, Roy Masters is a woman hater, I don't want to listen to him. Right? Now look how many women there are in this room. Lots of women. You don't think I'm a woman hater. Because actually, there's a reasonableness in me that saves you from your own unreasonableness, which all Adam should do with all Eve's. Adam's will should be involved with God's will to such a degree that he's impenetrable. He has to be saved from the spirit of the world. He has to stop looking for the love of a woman, which he foolishly thinks it complete him. And when this has happened, naturally you have a real man. A man who's not willful, but cannot be willed. Does not manipulate, but cannot be manipulated because he has a course according to the will of the Most High. Agreed, ladies? And every woman is looking for such a man who is not dominant with force, but dominant with the higher love that's in him, that cannot be beguiled, won't wimp out to doubt. You understand that? Good. So therefore, we know what kind of women hate Roy Masters. Not the real ones, but the ones that see that Roy Masters is a man, that Judge Bork is a man, that Colonel North is a man. But they hate him. See? They hold up to ridicule every man and every woman that is a spirit of light in them. Because the spirit of darkness has had its way so long through us all. So why one woman would be grateful to the man for being a real man and saying, now Eve, now put the apple down, there's a good girl. See? Another woman would be outraged that he didn't respond to her temptations. Feel very threatened. See? Who understands, what ladies understand how outraged a woman can be when you don't respond to the temptation? Okay, now questions.
Yeah, I was going to ask about my mother. I have a 2-year-old son, and I'm trying to correct him right now. My mother is very wicked and tries to get into him. Should I keep him away from her?
Absolutely. If your mother's very wicked and tries to get into him, by all means, that's the kind of woman I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
See, you're very fortunate. You're what I call a throwback. If you take a black chicken and a white chicken and you mate them, that you get black and white chickens. See? Then after a while, you mate those, and one day you'll have a black chicken and a white chicken all over again. See? So you get mixtures, and all of a sudden you get a black one and a white 10 generations down. Somehow with the spirit, there's a genetic in the spirits. Just because you come from a family, your mother's a witch, there may be something different in you. Not every person is born of the family is born of the same spirit. You are my spirit, and you're my kin. That's why some of you see me as a father image. See? You know where I'm coming from, and you love that. And you love me more than the family you've known all your life. Isn't that right? See? So, I would say, if your mother's a witch, don't hate her for it. Just protect your son from her.
Yeah, I shouldn't try to explain to her.
You could try. You can say, Mother, you're a witch. I love you for it. Say, Mother, see what you've done to me all my life. I'm out of it now. I used to be confused by you. You used to be inside me, and you got inside my soul and my sinew, right? See, and I wimped out to you, right?
Yeah.
And I was tormented, and that's why I did all these dumb things, and you couldn't figure me out, right? I said, we won't go into that right now. I said, but now I've found myself. I've found my light. And my light says to you that I have to talk to you about it. This is what you're doing. You're manipulating, you're upset, you have some strange ways about you, you never want to be wrong. You rather see me dead than admit you're wrong. Is that the way your mother is? Perfect, right? They all went to the same school. See, so you have to say that now, Mother, I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to correct you if you come into my house and start your monkey business and start, putting your hands on my kid and draining the life and confusing him. You're going to do that just one time. And then you're going to leave, and until you look at yourself, you can stay in your own little domain, right? That's what you should do. Be very polite about that. And she'll get angry, hoping to make you angry, but don't be angry back again.
No, she'll just tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That she's right.
She's never wrong. She's the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland. She's never wrong.
Yeah, because she likes to support him, compliment him all the time.
Well, she's putting her ego into it. She's putting the pride. Every woman with that spirit is charged with the unwholesome quality, duty, to serve the dark spirit in her by violating the innocence of her own children, either by upsetting the child and confusing that child, or by seeing no wrong in him. You understand that? Always building his ego up and loving him, and so that the child's ego will become dependent on that love and become the outcrop of that love, and will always do the mother's will on earth as it is in hell. Become a homosexual or something, you know what I mean? Become an ambitious person and always look for reinforcement to either her or another woman, that he himself will gravitate to him, because the spirit in him will draw him back to a wife like that. Follow that? That he will corrupt and use, or will allow herself to be corrupted by his demands, by his ego demands, which are by now craven demands. See? So there's a certain kind of woman that we're not going to cure, and they're a very dangerous woman, and they have caused more suicides and murders and disease and schizophrenia and violence and homosexuality. There's what comes through that kind of woman: confusion, madness, husbands committing suicides, taking drugs, becoming drunk, beating up their family. It's all come through this woman. Men don't know how to deal with it. Follow that? You're a survivor. aren't you? Okay? Anyone else has a witch for a mother? Don't all, don't all put your hand up one time. But remember, you also have a bum or a drunken bum or a wimp for a father, right? So there's no spirit to check the spirit of the woman coming into you. What Freud discovered, he says all children, I don't remember his exact word, but he discovered in not so many words that what all children want is a father to protect them from some unseen force. Because the unseen force is the mother. It's coming through the woman. All schizophrenia, all madness, all insanity, it comes from that kind of woman. Now you see, that kind of woman will immediately not hear me say there's two kinds. There's only one kind of woman. All women are alike, and there mustn't be any other knowledge to know that there are that kind of women. They mustn't know any other knowledge, because they're always right. And any other knowledge will show them to be wrong. That's egotism. They can't stand the truth. So they hate people who are bright. They hate strong men. And they are always conspiring to make their husbands weak. They'll marry weak men and make them weaker with their love, just so they can sit and preside in contempt over the little wimp. Right? Know any ladies like that? Mama. But I'm saying not all women are like that. And even though women do play those roles like that, they may not want to be that way themselves. You may have found yourself starting to be that way and realizing, wow, I'm becoming like my mother now. See, I'm doing the same thing to my husband and my kids now. And at least there's light in you that stops you. Isn't that nice? You're blessed. You're all blessed. How many partridge videos? Go ahead.
Yeah, Roy, I've been, I guess it's been about a month now since I've been listening to you, and you make a whole lot of sense, and I know that the things you're saying and I heard were coming from God. And I have been searching around for a while, and I went to different, places, and I learned about God. I knew, that I was born again, but
born again turkey is still a turkey.
Well, anyway, it was.
Remember that.
It's. I knew the word. I understood where God was and where I was at, but it was very hard to get that personal relationship with Him, And probably I wouldn't even be here now if you didn't have something that God gave you to give us, and that's that meditation. I mean, I know that is right from God, and I know that if anyone wants to get a personal relationship with God and get away from all the distractions of the world and
become infilled.
Right, and get that just personal love from God to give and to receive and know what that love is and be quiet and receive it. As churches and Christians say, well, get quiet with God. Well, this is really getting quiet with God when you sit down and meditate by yourself.
But see, the churches don't teach this quietness. They give you something to be busy with all the time, don't they? Studying, doing something for the church, going 2 by 2 from door to door, picnics. They keep you busy all the time. They talk about the truth, but they don't introduce you. Jesus criticized all of the religious leaders of his time for having the key of knowledge but throwing them away, not letting anybody enter into themselves. See how he said that? You have the key of knowledge, but you won't let anybody enter them into themselves. That's your fault, because you yourself, you want to be worshipped as the authority. You want to be put up on a pedestal, and you want to be the direction of people's lives, and they feel important giving directions. You stop somebody on the street. It's, excuse me, could you tell me where Seahorse Avenue is? And they'll, let me see now. They love giving directions. They love being important. They love telling everybody what to do. And even though they don't know how to tell you what to do, they'll invent it. You ask your dad a question, and he doesn't like to admit he doesn't know. One, he'll make you think you're crazy and tell you, shut up. It's a stupid question when it's a sensible one. Or he'd rather than admit he doesn't know, he'll invent something. He'll lie to you, invent it. People are such immense egotists, egomaniacs. They don't like to be wrong. And they'd rather see you dead than admit you're wrong. They'd rather see you confused than to see themselves confused. And they'll confuse you with their confusion. To plant that seed in you and take you away from God and make you a brainchild. Let's see, a person seeking direction from the outside. We've all been traumatized. We're all children of trauma. We're all children of original trauma, seeking the original trauma reassurances from the trauma source. Once you become traumatized, you will seek the reassurances from the very thing that traumatized you. That's why we're all in love with sin. See, and freedom in America has become, 1,000 different ways to do your own thing, but your own thing means go to hell any way you want. This is what freedom has become today. And that's why we see so much violence, so much man's inhumanity to man, because the more we drink, the more we smoke, the more we think we're doing these wonderful things, enjoying rock and roll music, and sniffing and snorting and sexing, and the more we do, we're into all these things, we're getting our jollies, we get this ego is growing and growing, but so is this beast. See? And this beast is becoming, in other words, we have become we are a dehumanized nation. Not all of us are dehumanized, but too many of us are dehumanized. And if anyone should organize these dehumanized people, you're going to have a Hitler Germany all over again. They're all out there, violent people to cut your head off as soon as look at you, and play with your heads like footballs on the. They would. They disembowel a woman and pull her guts out and feed the fetus to the dogs. They would. They're all out there and they're called Americans. But they're not really Americans, they're dehumanized animals. And see, there is no way back for them, but there is for you, because to some degree, you all have a little bit of that in you, don't you? Am I right, ladies and gentlemen? You've all hurt others and been cruel and robbed people of their rights and lorded them over them. But you're different, you feel guilty. There's something following you that wants to save you because you're different. But you have that nature, which they have all of. You have a little of what they have all. See? Now, ready?
Yeah. Well, I came from the whole deal. Yeah, right. And, I'm still a bit screwed up, but I've come back from the brink, basically. What should I do about, like, my sister? I look at her kids, and they're going through the machine,
Good dehumanizing machine.
Oh, yeah. I struck upon that Nazi deal because I used to watch the television at I was about 8 years old, and I didn't watch it in horror or anything. I understood the concentration camp.
Well, that's what's happening here.
Oh, I know it.
Every home is a concentration camp, in case you didn't know.
And I started sharing with that about other people, like, these people are Nazis. These are the same people that came out of the woodwork in Germany 50 years ago.
You're talking about mothers and fathers?
Mine, anyway.
Yeah, your mother.
It is. It's a classic case. It's like my mother was viciously cruel and evil, and my father couldn't care less, doesn't want to know.
All right, now what you have is a communist dictatorship. But if your father was cruel and evil, you'll have a Nazi dictatorship. The communist is feminine. Once you get caught up into that, no communist nation that's gone communism has ever gone back to democracy. See, while fascist dictatorships are weak because they need a woman's support, they're violent and cruel and can't stand all by themselves. But a communist dictatorship is very feminine. It's for the children. It's love, and then all of a sudden you begin to see this.
No, she's not very vicious, very cruel.
Originally she would.
I never saw any. Well, to the outside she did.
Yeah, right. That's right. Originally to your father. Otherwise, did he think you would have fallen if it was like that to begin with?
Right. Right.
See?
So what do I do? I like confronted my mother and
your sister is married? Your sister's in this house? Your young sister?
No, she's married, and she's been married, I don't know, she's got about 8 kids, but it's like, I knew there was something horrible going on. I always knew it.
But yeah, I need a specific question.
So what do? I see them going through. Do I just let them go? I don't know what
Well, to the degree that you understand what's going on between her and her husband, it's always the man-woman relationship.
Right.
You try to explain it.
Oh.
See, now, I've spent this whole week, so I don't want to go over it again.
Right, yeah.
But you need to, wherever I can, and the more you understand, the more you help others with, to become you become a teacher, well, you know it better when you teach. It's one thing to listen to me. But the minute you grasp a little bit of it and you put it to practice, and it works, and then you explain it to others, you find the degree to which you don't understand it, but then you do understand it. You start to reach, because you see that you want, and that some people pull it out of you. Some people are so receptive, all of a sudden, whoop, comes right out and you don't. And other people, you know, your fingers and thumbs and tongue. You feel your own words coming back. Forget them. The ones that pull it out of you, there's a way of, there's a longing. And you'll find that it comes out naturally. You don't have to be clever intellectually. You don't have to be a linguist. You don't have to have the greatest grammar. It's going to come out, and as you come out, you're going to be learning more yourself. Because to teach is to learn. And to give is to get. And to love is to be loved. And to be patient is to have patience. You can't give the stuff away. Your cup will run over. And they will see this light. You have to be, each one of you have to be a light in the darkness. And you can only hang on to it by sharing it. But I don't want you to evangelize. You know, Roy Master says this and Roy says that. Don't do it. I want you to live it. And you'll understand, breathe it. And you'll understand it. And when you understand it, not just mechanically learn it, to think that more you learn, the more you know, that's the ego way. You're becoming a knowledge machine. And in through that knowledge machine will come the spirit of knowledge. And you'll have a wrong spirit. Like all the... Remember what the truth was in the garden? Pride enters through the knowledge of good and evil. So you can be very church learned. Verse and chapter. You can be very knowledgeable in science and everything else. But if you're involved intellectually with a prideful thing, like we were talking about all the time, what have you got is a wrong spirit, and you'll be ruinous to your marriage, ruinous to your health, because you'll be a totally unreasonable person. You'll be an unreasonable scientist. You'll say atomic energy is safe when it isn't. See? You'll take the wrong view, unconsciously creating havoc without realizing, thinking you're doing the right thing because you never can be wrong. And you'll hate good and reasonable men, and you'll hold them up to ridicule. You'll become an Edward Kennedy. Yuck. Thank you very much for supporting this program. No wonder his wife is an alcoholic. I've seen how he questions and confuses and turns things around. Support the program, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot tell you when I'm going to yank this program off the air. I've got to be encouraged, otherwise I can't do it. One way you can help the program and help yourself is to get the book and the cassettes. At the end of the program, it's on the end of the tag end of the program, we'll give you the address and the phone number. There's usually somebody around in the evening to take the calls, but you might want to call during the daytime. It's not an impulse thing, you know. I'd like you to call and say hello and keep the program on the air. And I'd like you to support the program, but I don't want you to get involved like the fundraising things like on Channel 28, you know, and here. Even the educational stations have someone keep nagging you all the time, you know, ringing bells and the phone's ringing and everybody. I don't know. I can't do all that. I'd much rather spend the time, you know, helping you people and trust that you'll use good judgment in supporting this program. After all, we are a religious organization. We're a church, but you can't belong anyway, so too bad for you. There's no ego trip in belonging to the foundation. I belong to the foundation of human honesty. You can only belong to yourself. And if you belong to anything, you can't belong to yourself. Belonging to anything is an ego trip. Very dangerous. You get high on religion. And thank you very much. And join us on our next program and get the meditation joining next week.